Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Talking About the Big Stuff podcast with Michael Cole and Matthew Cravat. I am Michael Cole.
And I am Matthew Cravat.
All right, so tonight I want to talk about the idea of I kind of didn't know how to word this in the title, so I called it.
So I don't know what we're talking about because I don't know how you worded this in time. Something about the Pirates of Penzance is all I know.
Penance and self-flagellation in the face of guilt. And so what I wanted to talk about was when people get either get caught or confess to or whatever, like something bad
in the eyes of the Lord.
Something bad, and then they double down on. It doesn't have to be religion. It can be, but it's very often religion or ideology. So I kind of think about the fact that you have a lot of addicts. When they get clean, they kind of replace their addiction with religion, and and there's lots of different things that you can have done that you overcompensate. And I think that there is this situation of like, we want to take a step in the right direction, and then it becomes, like, I think addiction, for example, I think that if you have something that helps you cope and get through the addiction, that's a good thing. But there is a way of doing it before it becomes a
new addiction,
or you're like completely,
say like
leaning into
recent converts to a religion or deconverts to atheism are the most like evangelical and aggressive about it because it's new to them and it's fresh to them, and they push it on everybody else.
So what I was thinking of is the penance and self-flagellation in
so Catholic
in opposite. Well, yeah, I know the words are very Catholic. In opposition to like a repentance, which I think repenting, not religiously, but in general, like trying to do better is a good thing. Trying to right wrongs or do better is a good thing. But I think that when it is trying to, we just did the can thing a few weeks ago, where it's restorative justice versus retributive justice, and penance and self-flagellation are just self-imposed retributive justice to some extent. Do you disagree? Or you give me a look like, where you go?
I'm waiting for the self-flagellation to become horny. Okay, good.
Yeah. No, and I just think like there is a difference between between I'm trying to make things right and I'm trying to learn from my mistakes, and this is becoming performative.
And I think there's a key of that performative part is, okay, I'm forgiven now because I said I'm sorry to myself a bunch of times. I beat myself up over it, not in this religion. I beat myself up over it till I feel it's okay. But having done nothing restorative in the world to undo harm that you may have done, just I beat myself up enough about it, so now I feel good about it.
Yeah, and we could talk about that, but I'm also talking about like. So I'm going to give an example, and I'm probably going to immediately drop it off because I don't want anybody to hear, like, certain people to hear this because I think a lot of people will think it's about them. But like,
you're so vain. You probably think this confession's about you. Oh, you're so vain.
I think
Mike probably did something really bad to you. Sorry.
No, it's not. It has nothing to do with me. I think that there's a lot of people who cheat. This is what kind of brought it up for me. Was I think I'm witnessing this happen. But you get a lot of people who cheat.
Sarah cheating on you again?
No. And then you get someone who cheats, and then when they, when that situation kind of comes to an end and comes to a head, the step in right.
Is that cheating though? Just getting ahead?
Depends on who it's with. Anyway, and when it comes to a head, in order to show that you want to show remorse and show that you're taking the steps in the right direction. I think people, and this is religion, but it's not always like the example I'm thinking of is religion, but it's not always having to be religion. They go, we should go to church more together because I cheated on you. We should start going to church. I think that'll make me better. And then it becomes very performative going back to church and getting all into church and kind of changing who you are. And it's like, you don't need to change who you are. You need to adjust and address this problem. And so I'm not talking about people who were not religious, but I'm talking about people who were, let's say, like, casually religious, get caught doing something bad, become significantly more religious, become especially more performative about their religion, like
What
letting
do you think
everybody
that
know.
is, Michael?
What do I think that is, or why?
Why do you think that is? Why does someone choose to become more religious, or performatively at least?
Because it's like almost like a virtue signal that I'm taking this serious. Like I'm taking it serious because I want you to know that I'm, and personally, as a non-religious person, like if I did something bad, I don't think that like going to church would solve the problem. Even if there's certain things I think that it can be a peace of mind thing for the person who's having issues sometimes, but
Could it be that they think I did a bad thing, and if I was being more religious, then I wouldn't do a bad thing, so it will stop me from doing it again
yeah,
if I become more religious?
I think so. But I think in the
Because no
examples that
religious leader has ever done anything improper. Clearly, it works.
right. I think that obviously your point is right, but I'm also thinking about the situations in which I've seen it, and it isn't just like, well, I'm going to go to church. It's we're going to go to church. We're going to do this together, and like I don't know, like I I this is complete.
Are you telling the world out there, and this is not about me or you, because it's not our world, that hey, if your spouse suddenly wants to go to church more,
Oh
probably
no,
probably banging.
no, no,
Assume that
no,
if your
no,
spouse says to you, "Let's go to church more," your spouse is getting it hard and heavy, or giving it hard and heavy,
no.
depending on the spousal direction that they wish to go. They could give, receive, or both. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. With the speed limit might be 69. You know what I'm saying? I don't know who's
In
giving, who's
in
receiving.
the examples I'm thinking of, the people who were doing that, it was fully out in the open by the time they got to the going to church part. So like it was confronted with the spouse. So this is not like a
Yeah.
secret thing. This is a
Yeah. So this might be this is my proof to you that I'm not going to do
right,
it
and that's what I
anymore.
mean when I say performative.
Okay.
Like
So
like
not necessarily just self. I was thinking as self performative. Oh, if I go do
no,
this thing, then I don't feel so bad about myself. Look, I read it. Like the thing of God, if you let me through this, then I'll go to church and I'll give money to the poor. Blah blah blah. Kind of thing of I'm going to do this because to make up for what I did in a way that's not truly restorative because it's just me going to church,
yeah,
not helping anyone.
no. I
You're
think
saying, but part of it might be hey, look, if you're afraid our marriage is not going to be strong because I did this, we'll do this. We'll go to church, and that makes me more moral. So I can't possibly cheat on you again because people at church never cheat.
yeah. Oh, I also think it just shows. I think that so you're not religious and I am not anymore, but like I think from my previously religious mindset, I think that there is a level to which it seems natural to be like, let's like if you cheat, doing something together is possibly a good idea regardless, right? Going to therapy, going and getting a new hobby, like
Marriage encounter
and
programs.
any you know what I'm saying, like
Yeah, yeah,
the bonding idea. So like I don't think that it is inherently like comes from a bad place. I think that at that point there's a certain
yeah.
point at which it becomes like, oh, if I
I
stop
didn't want to
going
suggest that it
now,
could only be the bad reason, but that's a
yeah.
potential bad.
But I think there's also the idea of like, okay, well, in my when I was feeling guilty, I started doing this, and now if I stop wanting to go to church because I don't like church, or I don't like going to church, I don't like waking up every Sunday, and there are non-religious things that this applies to that I just can't think of any examples. But like I don't want to wake up every Sunday
Well,
morning
just
like
I
that's
started doing all that. I'll
yeah,
do dishes, honey, and
right,
I'll pay the rent, and
yeah,
I know I've done you wrong. That whole kind
right.
of thing.
And then you like you know that if you let it slip, then that almost looks like your commitment to fixing the problem let slip, and so you then have to like commit to this thing that you maybe just did in the moment. Like like I even though I'm going to therapy right now, like in my life, I've also like had spurts where I'm like I need to go to therapy, I need medicine, but I know that it's not a permanent thing I need. It's just a thing I need right now, and I'm okay with that. And sometimes I think people, I mean, this for some people that's absolutely the case. Right now, I'm realizing that like I'm actually happier than I've ever been, so I should have been on medicine the whole fucking time. But like, so I'm kind of a hypocrite in what I'm about to say. But I think that it's like I know that we don't see the benefit to religion as much, but like to some people there is a benefit, obviously, and so you see the benefit at the beginning, but it
And
also
if you're
becomes
one
a
of the masses,
symbol.
an opiate of the masses can be delicious.
Yeah, it becomes a symbol of your effort, and if you let that symbol of your effort slip, then all of a sudden your the symbol of your effort is slipping, is your effort slipping, is your faithfulness in the marriage sense, not in the religious sense, is that slipping because this thing that you were doing semi symbolically, but also there was a reason at the beginning maybe that thought it would help. And I think people start to double down and become, and I think that it can help lead people down to some really dangerous spots relationship wise, and it's not just cheating. Like I said before, I think that addicts are very similar in a lot of ways. I think for addicts it probably actually becomes an addiction, they replace one addiction for another, but I'm sure for some it is the ritual of it, and like if I let the ritual slip, I let the everything it stands for and everything it's doing slip as well. Okay, well that's good. We covered the topic.
Here's what I don't understand. I don't understand how people who consider themselves religious and believers in the mainstream religions that have sin and stuff like that um, do things like cheating. Because here's me. Let's say I am about to shoplift a can of tuna fish because I love me some tuna fish. And I turn around, and standing there is Wilford Brimley in his security guard outfit with a hand on his flashlight and a hand on his taser watching me. Mm-hmm. I would opt not to steal the can of tuna while the security guard is standing there watching me. So I wonder, as someone who's never been a believer in a magic security guard in the sky who's always watching me, how does one sin if you believe someone's watching you at all times? Like, I mean, no matter how weak you are, like if you're about to have an affair and the spouse of the person who's not there for cuck reasons walks in and sees you, you don't continue. You're like, oh shit, I'm caught. So if you believe that God, Jesus, or any variant thereof is in the room with you watching, how do you go through with it if you really believe that you're being caught?
I can only speak to it because masturbation was a
You're
sin.
Masturbation
was a sin as far as I understood growing up. When I was still a believer, I believed that masturbation was a sin and was,
that made it hotter. Watch me, Jesus. Watch me.
No, but I didn't not masturbate because even though I thought it was just a matter of
if Jesus had appeared in a corporal form when you were about to pop that whip,
I would have stopped in that moment. But I don't know.
Why is him appearing different than you thinking that he can see you?
I think you just put it out of your mind. Honestly, I genuinely do. I think I don't think I was thinking about God or Jesus watching me when I would jerk off.
When I used to watch you jerk off, you would say, "Oh God, oh Jesus," a lot.
Wow, we get a lot for patrons tonight.
Just because I'm Jewish, don't call me Jesus. We're not all the same. But that's not important. I'm
gonna get a text in a few minutes that Sarah's gonna be like, "Logan can hear everything you're saying."
Can't hear me though. I'm on headphones.
Yeah. So anyway, that genuinely, that's my is that you have you're a 13-year-old boy who
I don't really think people believe what they say they believe, because if they believed that Jesus was watching, then how would you do the thing that if you wouldn't do it if he appeared magically in front of you, then how do you look up at the blinking red light in the sky that means a security camera? Like if I'm in a store where I know the security camera, I'm not going to shoplift. If Jesus is always there in the basement with his bank of television screens, and he knows when you've been sleeping, and he knows when you're awake, and he knows when you've been bad or good, how do you do the bad thing when you think that Santa Christ is watching?
I don't think that it is a matter of not believing, genuinely, because I genuinely believed for a period of time where I also genuinely railed myself to sleep every night. And I think what it was like, I also came from a religion that believes heavy in forgiveness. Like anything can be forgiven. I mean, you've seen The Godfather. Literally anything can be forgiven if you're Catholic, as long as you ask for it. And so I think that's part of it. And I think
and sometimes I like to beg for it.
Yeah. And I think that I think that the forgiveness part is there because if the standard is too ridiculous, you you don't want, like, it's if you were sentenced to hell for every little thing you did and there was no return, the second you like succumbed once, you'd be like, all right, well, I'm
50
going to
cents.
hell anyway. So
50 cents. 50 cents.
and so I think that's why so many religions are heavy on the forgiveness part, and so they're like, I'm a moment of weakness, or it's I'm
So the
13 years
greatest,
old and this thing won't go down, and
the greatest religious leader in my generation, my childhood, my upcoming, was a Catholic priest who was very famous here in America. From Italy. His name was Father Guido Sarducci, and Father Guido Sarducci talked about how sin, like different sins, had different monetary values as a way to look at it. So, like taking the Lord's name in vain is like a dime. Murdering someone's like $100,000. Masturbating is 50 cents. He goes, and then when you get to St. Peter, they kind of add up which things you haven't been forgiven for. And and you could be in, you kill someone, that's $100,000. That's you're going to be over the limit. But those 50 cents, they add up. 50 cents, 50 cents, 50 cents. Those add up pretty fast.
yeah, that reminds me of The Good Place.
Yeah.
Towards the end, but I think that's why it's structured in such a way. The idea of forgiveness. I mean, I just, but my and I get your point, but I also like having been there in my life, understand that like you got to do what you got to do sometimes. And so I think that I just think that there is this
I
sense
should put a
of like,
sign over your bed that said, God is watching right now and his cock is in his hand, in the hole in his hand, sticking through.
oh, I thought you meant like Kiss from the Rose on the Grail seal.
Yeah, him too. He masturbates the same way.
How many times can I do this in one episode?
16.
16?
For
Nice.
the 17th time to come.
Nice, okay.
I've done the math. I put in the work. I did the research.
Yeah.
I don't like to come here unprepared.
Yeah. I mean, I really do think that this applies to other things than just religion. I am having a hard time thinking of
I think you put yourself in a corner when you used all the religious terminology.
right, but that's why I kind of went
Right.
back and explained.
So I thought we were talking about the Pirates of Penzance, though.
No, I'm not a model of a modern major general. So that's Pirates of Penzance, right?
It is. It is. It is.
I know the whole speech. I had to do it in theater class of my junior or senior year of high school. Actually, I used to know the whole speech. Now I know it to the part where I know the battles. If I did the whole thing,
Waterloo and orders categorical.
yeah, understand equations with the simple and quadratical.
Quote the fights.
Historical, that's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah, Marathon to Waterloo and order categorical.
Yeah. Anyway,
quadratical.
so do you have anything to contribute to? I know that you were responding to me, but do you have any ideas or anything that apply to this?
No, I just like kind of what I said before. Like I think there's definitely a matter of when people dive into something and they become the biggest evangelists for it, and for whatever the need they have, whether they're making up for a shortcoming, a perceived shortcoming, or something else. They want to believe that what they're doing is right.
Yeah.
Even and so like just throwing yourself into it and doing it, and like the more you want to do it, the more to prove to yourself that it's the right thing to do. So keep doing it, keep fighting it, even in the face of evidence that it's not helping or not worth doing.
Yeah, I actually did. Because I knew I had thought of a couple of
Politics is a good place to see it. You can see
yeah.
political theories that don't work in real life, but people still fight for them because they don't want to admit.
But I also back to politics. You also see a lot of people who like, well, I was I had this issue and I was a punk and I needed to be straightened out, and so I this bad thing that like you and I would think is like, well, that's clearly not a good thing. And they're like, well, it straightened me out.
I was spanked and it worked for me.
Yeah, I was spanked and it worked for me. I was, I would have been
Oh,
a
back to you
piece.
spanking it. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to come back to that.
That's okay. Or, but it can be done on, so many other things. And we do see it politically. I think we see with like, like I have often said that everyone I know anecdotally who has cheated the government out of, who has used the system inappropriately is conservative. Like, like every single person, every time I've ever heard someone go, oh, well, they don't need to be, but they're working under the table so that they can get, this benefit or that benefit. And then you find out, they're like, oh yeah, that person was like a hardcore Trump. Like, because they don't want, and I think that they're,
Well, that they tend to have people, not they, people tend to have a very much, it's okay when I do it, but other people are doing it for a bad reason mentality.
right. But I'm also meaning like sometimes they did it in the past tense and they were like, well, I know I was cheating the system, so everyone's cheating the system. And I think there's a little bit of that. And so then you get into these like, they don't deserve it because I didn't deserve it and I got it. And a lot of that, conservative self-flagellation. And
Projecting their guilt on someone else.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think, and if we were conservatives on a conservative version of the show, after we got done talking about being alphas and stuff, we would talk about how I don't believe this to be true, but I think that this is an example they would call out for this. Liberals, like with white guilt and things like that, I think that they would see that as like overcorrection and self-flagellation of an issue. So like we're not. I don't believe that we are because we haven't actually solved the fucking problem, and we haven't, like and I also don't think that like I don't think that like equality is necessarily self-flagellation in in making things right. But I think that there's a lot of people who would argue when you hear, especially two white liberals, progressives, uh, yeah, well, I know you're Jewish, but for most part, people consider you white.
Until the tanks come rolling in. And then suddenly it's, he's in my attic.
Well, true. And eventually, far enough down the line, Italian, Irish, all the things I am. I'm a little bit English, so it would take a little while to get all of me. But anyway,
Why not take all of me?
But the point being, like, I think that it does. There is model for this problem in politics. Clearly, when we talk about conservatism, but I also think that they would call us out on it. I think that there's a lot of this weird. There's a lot like I had a friend that I used to work with who voted for Obama, was like very big Obama, then went Trump, and I think went Trump all three times, and was like, I'm embarrassed that I voted for Obama, blah blah blah, and I was just like, why? Like what? I don't understand. Like where did the problem happen? And I think it's like an overcorrection. Like not to say that the correction is needed, but you know what I'm saying. Like it's not exactly.
Yeah, so I was just thinking, I had
Perceived
one time that a friend of my wife's from her childhood was in town, and oddly enough, in our neighborhood, there's a woman who's from my wife's childhood. Like they were friends as kids, and they knew each other in college, and then we just randomly ran into her in the neighborhood, and she and her husband live in our neighborhood.
Nice.
And we've known that for 20 years, but what they
Yeah.
do. And so this guy was from their childhood, was in town, so we all went, the five of us went out to dinner. So the two couples and this guy who was in town. And my wife's friend in the neighborhood's husband is a huge MAGA guy now, and back then he was just a huge Republican. This was years ago, but he assumes everyone else is because he is. So he started slamming on Obama about how horrible Obama is while he was in office. And the other guy and I exchange a look, and I don't really know this guy very well, but I'm like, I'm not going back. I said, yeah, I agree, man. Obama sucks. And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, he is so too moderate. There are so many things he could be doing while he has the House and Senate. And I was just going off on how much more liberal he could be. And then this other guy who I've never met before is like, I feel the same way, Matthew. Just, like, why is he, giving in on universal health care? They're never going to vote for it anyway. Why is he softening his stance? And I was like, it was so funny to watch Joe just be freaked out that, oh my God, I'm with liberals.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I agree, and I've been in that situation. I also, this is a little off. This is off topic, but one of the things that I definitely saw in my own family is when Bernie looked like he was going to be the spoiler vote. They loved Bernie when it, like 2016, when he was like
He's not.
making it harder for Hillary. Yeah, like I remember people in my family being like, "Bernie's doing great," and I'm like, "Yeah, I want him to win. He's not gonna, but I want him to win." And they're like, "Oh, he's ruining it for Hillary," and I'm like, mm. And now now that he's no longer the spoiler vote, and he went in campaigned for her and everything else, they don't like him. But and there's at least one person in my family who I think disliked him from the very beginning and was very open about it. I disagree with every single point he made, but at least he was consistent. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
you could dislike him and be happy that he's spoiling the vote.
Yeah.
I didn't like Ross Perot, but I like the fact that Ross Perot got Bill Clinton elected, even though I didn't like his stance on anything.
Yeah. I remember being a little kid. My dad liked Ross Perot, and my godfather was a Democrat at that point. I don't know that he'd be a Democrat now. I think he has dementia. He's like pushing 90. And I think he has dementia. But like, I don't know that he'd be a Democrat now. He was racist enough that I doubt he voted for Obama. But anyway, the point being, in 1992, he was a Democrat. And my dad and him were talking about politics at like dinner one time when they were over. And my godfather goes, "You're gonna vote for that guy? That guy's the stuff you find behind the toilet." And my dad like looks and he goes, "What?" And he goes, "P-Rot. He's P-Rot."
Yeah, Ross Perot.
Yeah. And you gotta picture that impression with a very heavy Boston accent. I don't even know how to do it.
Wicked Pissa. He's Perot.
It's not it's a Kennedy accent, which is
Same thing.
no, that is very
Same
specific to the
shit.
Kennedy family.
Same shit.
Nobody on earth but the Kennedys sound like that.
Same shit.
And
No,
now the
Mayor
Kennedys don't even
Quimby,
sound like that. They sound like
that. Mayor Quimby sounds like that.
Alex, get on here and do your impression.
Impress us.
Yeah. We should just get a video of Alex doing the RFK impression for Instagram. Like, would you do this episode is about? Anyway, I don't think he's even paying attention anymore.
I know he's off getting his drinks. He's usually in his third beer by 40 minutes. If he did, he would have cut in by now, and he hasn't. Therefore, he's not. Clearly,
he did cut in right before Matthew said that. Obviously. Anyway, so we've only been talking for 30 minutes, and
it's your topic, man.
I know, but I don't know.
I just always find it an interesting quirk of human nature that people set moral, ethical, whatever standards for themselves that they even for themselves that they cannot reach, but they're much more forgiving for themselves than they are for other people who don't reach the same moral standards.
Sometimes. I think there's a certain group of people who I think are harder on themselves than they are on others. Those are called Democrats. No, no, but I think that you're right. It's very often.
The George Carlin example of do you ever notice everyone who drives slower than you is an idiot, and everyone who drives faster than you is a maniac? Yeah, that same kind of thing. It's like what would you do? It's okay. Yeah.
Audience, just so you know, I've gotten every single reference he's made this podcast, the conversation leading up to this podcast, and if I miss one little one, he's going to just be like, "You never get anything."
Did you get Bill Bailey? Did you get that one? No. I knew you didn't get that. I put it in the chat so I could berate both of you later, and neither one of you got Bill Bailey.
I don't know who Bill Bailey is.
Okay, but maybe you know him as
I've seen his face, yeah.
Maybe you know him as Bill Spade. No, not the comedian Bill Bailey. No, not him. Who? It's a song from like the 30s. Won't you come home, Bill Bailey? But you might know from the Jetsons because when Jane entered like a music contest, she sang "Won't You Come Home, Bill Spacely." So I'll push the buttons, baby.
Anyway. So I agree with what you were saying that a lot of times people put these goals, but I also think that there is some degree of some of these moral lines that we've drawn are difficult for a lot of people, and they are so ingrained in society. And I think cheating is a good example. I think that while some people can really thrive and benefit from monogamy, other people don't find it to be an effective way of living. But because it was so taboo to not live that way in this country for so long, and for in a lot of society for so long, that like you had people just going off and cheating instead of having open marriages and setting those limits. And so like in those cases, finding a way to deal with it, to be in that monogamous situation that you want in some ways to be in, but you're just having a difficulty doing, is a good thing. I think the idea of, if you're an addict, especially depending on what you're addicted to, it can be really, dangerous for you and for everybody else in your life to potentially to keep going that way. You can create a lot of problems. So like, trying to get sober is a good thing for a lot of people, and it's just that the pendulum swings too far, and we said before, you replace an addiction with addiction. I think that there is a lot of good that this stuff starts out with, and I'll give an example of something that I think some people, the way I've always looked at guilt and shame, and I'm not the greatest example sometimes, but in this way I think I am right. I remember being 22ish and going out.
Funny, you don't look 22ish.
Anyway, I remember being 22ish and going out somewhere, on like a 4th of July or Memorial Day, one of these days where cops are all out all over the place. And I had some people tell me, just so you know, when you're coming back, there is going to be a checkpoint at this, intersection and this intersection, so you got to avoid those. And I was like, I'm not going to be drinking. And they're like, well, you don't have to do that. And I'm like, no, I do. I have to drive, so I'm not going to be drinking. And they couldn't understand it, and I would explain, like,
I said don't drink and drive.
Yeah, I don't want to drink and drive, not because I'm worried about cops. I'm worried about having to look in the mirror for the rest of my life, having killed somebody, and that's why I don't.
Looking in the mirror is tough enough for you, I imagine.
It absolutely. I mean, this was 20 years ago, so I was significantly better looking, with a lot less gray. But yeah, I was like, I can't live that way. So I understand this impulse to. I don't want to say that's overcorrecting. That is not overcorrecting what I just used as an example. But as somebody who reflects guilt inward and thinks I need to do better in things than the standard. Like you and I talk, unfortunately, way too much on this show about the age of consent, and I think that it should not be legal for someone my age to have sex with a 19 or 20-year-old. I don't think that makes any moral sense. And so, like, I've set that standard. Sarah has set that standard way higher. It's specifically just one.
She doesn't think you should have any sex with anyone younger than her,
or older,
or older.
But my point being,
I think they should go by the half your age plus 7 rule. That should be the law.
It works pretty well. That rule does work pretty well, at least for a little while. I think when you get into your 90s, it's probably not the greatest.
Yeah, but even then, the person that is the half your age plus 7 is a full-grown adult who can make whatever decision they want.
True. And you probably don't have that much power over them.
Right. I'm saying they're in their 50s too. They're not a child. You're not taking advantage of them.
Fair. Anyway, but my point being, like,
wiggly balls in their mouth, they can have your wiggly balls in their mouth. So
balls on the nose.
So they can inherit your money.
Anyway, the point being, like, I think that the idea of setting good standards, and like I said, I face inward. A lot of people think about, like, oh, I just don't want to get caught. I don't want,
Isn't it weird that that's the way our society is geared, though? Like, our society is, hey, driving at breakneck speed can cause an accident and kill you or someone else. Driving drunk can cause an accident and kill you or someone else. I mean, you can even just kill someone because your reflexes are off by a little
Mm-hmm.
bit.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's not enough to stop you? Well, we'll charge you $100 if you do it. Oh, okay. In that case, I won't do it. I might get charged $100. I'm not worried about killing people.
Yeah.
I don't want to get a ticket. And
Oh yeah, and when you suggest like, oh, the reason I don't drink and drive is because I don't want to kill someone, it like literally you can watch people. If anybody ever has that conversation with you, you're beyond the age. I'm beyond the age where people have that conversation much anymore. But if it ever were to come up and you do it,
You
you
also
can
don't
see
drink.
see the look on. Yeah, that's true. You can see the look on that person's face as they consider it, and they're like, "Oh shit, that's a thing that could happen too." And it's like that's the thing. That's the reason why it's illegal.
I think, and it's weird. I think it's put in most people's head of, "Am I sober enough to not get pulled over?" Is what people think.
Yeah.
Rather than, "Am I sober enough not to hit someone?" Like,
Right.
because
Right.
it's so ingrained that that's the reason you don't. You don't because it's get you a ticket.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, like, I think that not drinking and then driving is not overcorrection. But I also I think that it's that same impulse. I think there is a good start, is what I'm trying to say about
Overcorrection would be going from bar to bar as a designated driver to strangers.
yeah, yeah, at your own expense.
Yeah.
Like you're paying the gas and
Just here to drive for you. Oh, I get a free seltzer in the bar. Yay.
yeah. Did I ever tell you? So you remember Subba, who was on the show a couple years ago?
I do.
She came into the office one day, and I had a mug or whatever filled with liquid. She goes, "What's in there?" And I was like, "Seltzer." And she goes, "I was joking. You have alcohol in there?" I'm like, "No, I have seltzer in there." And she goes, "They make non-alcoholic seltzer?" I'm like, the fact that they call it alcoholic seltzer means that it wasn't the original.
They have non-alcoholic beer. Mm-hmm. But they call it non-alcoholic
beer. But they don't call beer alcoholic beer.
They call it non-alcoholic beer because it's not normal. It's like a veggie burger.
Yeah, yeah. Or I remember going to, this was when I was like in my mid-20s. It used to drive me fucking nuts because I used to not like cheese on my burgers. And I would go to Burger King in Framingham, Massachusetts. It was that one specifically. And I would say...
The one near Polytech Institute?
No. Yeah. Anyway, I would go there and I'd order a hamburger. And they'd be like, "You want a cheeseburger?" And I'm like, "Nope, I want a hamburger." And they're like, "So a cheeseburger, no cheese?" I'm like, "That's a hamburger. A cheeseburger is a hamburger with cheese. I'd accept that as an answer." It would drive me fucking nuts.
It's funny because when I was a child, McDonald's, their number 2 burger, they had the Big Mac, was the quarter pounder. And it was extra to get a quarter pounder with cheese.
Yeah.
And now only a quarter pounder with cheese is on the menu. Like you have to get it, take the cheese off. Because this way they
But at least they call it a quarter pounder with cheese.
Yeah, but this way they can charge you for the cheese. Like you don't save money by having it removed. There used to be 2 different prices, one with cheese, one not. Now it's just like, oh, you're getting a quarter pounder with cheese without the cheese. That's just on you, buddy. You just paid an extra 15 cents for no reason.
Yeah. QPC is what they call them now.
Yeah, it just used to be a quarter pounder was the regular one.
Yep. They're overcorrecting.
Now they found a way to make it more profitable. Make the cheeseburger the normal, and instead of charging extra for cheeseburger.
That's probably what was going on at Burger King as well, I'm sure. But it would drive me nuts because they would act like I was a fucking weirdo.
They ring up cheeseburger minus cheese. You don't save the money. Yeah, that makes sense. That's a good way to cheat you. That's how they get you. That's how they get you. You're kosher. It's against the Jews. It's all against the Jews. They don't want you. You want a kosher burger instead of a cheeseburger, and they get you.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't doing it because it was kosher.
Yes, you were. I understand. I know yours. I know.
I want to keep halal.
Halal is allowed to have cheese. They don't have that.
Yeah.
No pork, but they could do cheese.
Yeah.
I don't like cheese. I'm not like. I often don't do cheese on a burger because I don't think it adds that much. I don't feel like I notice if it's a burger versus a cheeseburger, and who needs the extra fat when I'm not going to notice it anyway.
I still do,
unless it's like blue cheese, really strong, or pepper jack.
Yeah, I'll do blue cheese. And if I go to Burger King, I still get a hamburger without cheese. But if I go, but I like a lot of burgers with cheese, but I can take it or leave it depending on the other toppings.
Yeah, so I think it generally adds. I mean, I guess you're getting your favorite burger, the Swiss and mushroom burger.
Yeah, kind of Swiss and mushroom they're a good combo. Also, when I'm making it at home, it's a really good way of keeping the toppings on the burger. Is you
Makes it
cook the
gooey.
mushrooms up, put the mushrooms on the burger as the burger patty's finishing up, put the cheese
Mozzarella
on
cheese.
that, and then let it melt so it's like kind of glued to it.
Yeah. Joe's a big smoked provolone on a burger fan because it adds that extra smoky flavor. Like you get more
Yeah,
flavor levels of it.
yeah, yep,
It's round, so it fits the burger better.
yeah. Should we start wrapping up?
Sure.
Because you're making me hungry.
I know I'm luscious that way. Follow me, I'm delicious. So listen, guys, I think what we're trying to say is, you know that if you're putting us in your eye holes on YouTube right now, that you are stealing from us by doing that without giving us anything back. So overcompensate. Like the video, make some comments, subscribe to the channel, ring the subscription bell. Go that extra mile to show that you love us and that you feel guilty about cheating on us with other podcasts and video casts.
Yep.
Or at the very least, open up your ear holes and let us penetrate you. Mike?
Yeah. So if you're listening to this podcast on any normal podcast player, you
Or even
know,
an abnormal one. We're
yeah,
not picky,
yeah,
Igor.
yeah. Either way, give us a like or a 5-star or a thumbs up or whatever your podcast app of choice allows. Yeah, give a middle finger up.
We're number one.
If it lets you do reviews or anything else, comments. I know Spotify allows comments. Do that. That's great. It's helpful.
Engage with our content.
Engage. And if you want to give us any, gifts of money, or if you don't want to give us give some money, but you want to watch this stream every week for free, you can go to patreon.com/talking about the big stuff and sign up for the free option, and then you'll see the stream available.
Well, I'm curious. If someone were to go to patreon.com/talking about the big stuff to watch that stream, would they hear all the disgusting shit that we say before it can be edited out because it's live?
If they watch it live.
So if they watch it live, it's live at patreon.com/talking about the big stuff. So they have the option of watching it live and hearing all the dirty stuff and hearing how restrained I was not to say your favorite familial quote, even though you were talking about the topic.
Yep.
I'm such a person.
Yeah, you are. You're great. Yeah. And, but also at patreon.com/talking about the big stuff, we also have some paid options, which will let you get the access early. Although if you watch the live stream, you don't have to.
And you can then listen to it the next day, or a couple days later, and you can listen to it on a Monday and feel the joy of saying, I was there when that happened. And where did all the dirty stuff go?
Yep. So we have that $1 option, which is the regular podcast early, $3 option, which is some extra stuff, and the $10 option, which is
full of fisting, baby, full of fisting.
I'm not going to edit that out today. I'm gonna put an at and then his company so that they see it.
The company that I work for, I think we're okay.
Yeah,
we advertise on Grindr, baby.
Well, yeah, that's probably true.
It is.
Yeah. And then, okay, I do want to plug one thing real quick.
Brainus.
It's already there. You told me to do it before the show.
Okay.
No, so I along with a couple of friends started a new podcast.
What?
It's going to be 7 episodes.
You're cheating on me and Alex in another podcast?
You've known. It's just coming out now. We've been working on it for about a year. We made a podcast all about Stanley Kubrick's movies. We watched them all, and we made a short film, which Matthew and Alex are in.
Stanley Kubrick's movies?
Both. We watched, I don't remember how many. There's some shorts, and then it was
Clockwork Orange, The Shining, and then the work you did with NASA.
Yeah. We did talk about the work you did with NASA. Anyway, if you want to see that that podcast, you can go on to YouTube or any podcast platform and look up The Completionists. Like I said, we go over all the Stanley Kubrick movies, and we talk about a short film that we made with, like I said, Matthew and Alex are in that. And I directed the segment.
Would I be able to see Alex if I watch that?
You'd be able to see Alex if you watch that, and that will be on the YouTube channel. I will tag the YouTube
eventually.
I'll tag it all in the show notes so that you can see it. And we worked really hard on it, and I know there's only 7 episodes, but we worked for about a year to put all this together, and so we're really hoping it gets seen and enjoyed. And if people like it enough, we've talked about possibly doing a second season. So.
And my lovely wife is in our short film.
And yes, Matthew's lovely wife, who has been on the show before. If you haven't seen her, you should go back and check out the 2 or 3 episodes that she's on. I think she's on at least 3, right? She did 2 one night, and then she did 1
in a row. I think she did 1 previously.
Yeah. So anyway, that's all I wanted to add. Matthew, you got anything?
No, I just want to say thank you for joining us to talk about the big stuff. It's better than self-flagellation.
Yeah, flatulation.
I'm sorry, I got gas.
Remember, the conversation doesn't end here. It's just the beginning. If you have thoughts or questions or topics you'd like us to tackle in a future episode, drop us a line on our social media channels. Engage with this video when you are now watching it as a VOD on YouTube. Send us an email. We love hearing from our listeners, bringing us topics, because if you leave it up to the 3 of us, we're going to eventually be talking about underwater basket weaving. So we would appreciate you guys reaching out a little bit. Don't forget to subscribe to Talking About the Big Stuff on your favorite platform. Give us a 5-star rating. Engage with it. Criticize us. We need to grow and be better, and you're going to help us be there. You're going to help us get to that point. It really helps us more to reach out and also to keep the conversation going. Thank you for tuning in. We'll be back next week with more big ideas and more thought-provoking discussions. Until then, stay curious, stay informed, and keep talking about the big stuff.
The preceding podcast has been a Chocolate Diamond Media LLC production. Copyright 2023, all rights reserved.